Today I am back examining what has to be the worst list of questions for atheists I've ever seen. It's on a website called Voice in the Wilderness Ministries that was run by this guy, Philip Del Rey, who sadly passed away in 2021, and he'll never hear what I have to say, so isn't that a disappointment? Today we are focusing on issues of morality. This page, it's a lot, and it's a lot of garbage. Someone should really Marie Kondo this page. It's a cluttered mess, and it definitely doesn't spark joy. I would hazard a guess that it exists not to help facilitate a dialogue, but to make Christians feel morally superior without ever approaching an atheist. You'll see what I mean. Hi, my name is Scarlett, and I am an atheist and skeptic. And yeah, questions for atheists. We're still doing this. This page really gives the game away that Phil isn't here to understand atheists. I think he's just trying to set up a straw atheist for Christians to puff up about and feel good. And this set of questions is all over the place. Just whatever Phil feels is right, and the atheist must be the opposite of that. Just look how he starts this section out, exposing the denial, the hypocrisy, the illogical and irrational thinking, inappropriate space and quotation, of atheists. And this is still under logic, it's not even under morality, but this is all going to be under morality. So already we are assuming that atheists are in denial, they are hypocrites, and they have thinking that is illogical and irrational. Let's see what he means by this. Number one, the moral relativist, parens atheist, says everything is relative. There are no absolutes. Isn't saying all things are relative an absolute statement? And number two, is that a contradiction? So then that is a false statement. Isn't that true? Holy fractal wrongness, Batman. So A, moral relativism is not the same as atheism. Personally, I think it is simply a fact that humans have different moral assessments across time, space, and cultures. I don't know how you get around that. And while Christians like to hold themselves up as having the right morality because it comes directly from the pure source, i.e. God, there are big disagreements among Christians on all sorts of issues. And Christianity, as practiced today, looks different from the past. Just look at attitudes on slavery. But in the modern era, Christians hold different opinions on the morality of same-sex relationships, abortion, trans issues, divorce, and I could go on. If there is a God guiding all this, he is not cutting through the noise to get the signal to come through. And B, some atheists actually do think that we could get to an objective morality. They say we should look at our shared values and decide what actions flow from there. So this is just wrong. And C, this is just clever language. Oh, isn't that a contradiction? Isn't that, oh, you said it's absolute. Well, it can't be absolute because this is relative, and haha, this won't really produce any kind of dialogue. And D, does anybody actually say this except in a quippy, slogan-y kind of way? I mean, this just kind of sounds like something you would throw out and not really mean it in a way that's reflective of your philosophy. So I just think, fractal wrongness. There's nothing good about this, and again, not conducive to a dialogue. Number 3, when you say it's wrong for you to impose your morals on me, aren't you trying to impose your morals on me by saying that? Does your moral system mandate that you impose your values on everyone? That's what I'm hearing, and I reject that. We can converse about right and wrong, but me telling you to butt out of my life does not impede you from having your own moral system and determining right and wrong on your own. Example, if someone wants to be polyamorous and you want to impose monogamy on that person can tell you to shove it. Not your business, you can still be monogamous. And if you want to create laws that are not aligned with my moral values, I can call that out as well. So for example, I think that same-sex marriage is morally neutral. Nothing wrong with it, so why shouldn't people marry the person of their choosing? It doesn't impact who you choose to marry. Get on with your life. Number 4, how about this one? There is no such thing as right or wrong. Is that right or wrong? Just love this. How about this one? It's like, I really feel like these are brain farts. Does anybody actually say that? This, to me, sounds like a slogan or something somebody says tongue-in-cheek. They might say it for other purposes. I don't know. 5, here's another good one. Oh yeah, let's hear it. All truth is a matter of one's own opinion, just like I prefer chocolate over vanilla. That is subjective and appropriate for personal preferences like food, but that same rationale breaks down when applied to objective truth, such as morality. So A, demonstrate that morality is objective truth. For me, our moral values are preferences, what we have chosen, although I'm not sure that we're totally free in this because we are influenced by the culture and the time that we live in. But the moral values themselves are something we've chosen. And once again, this actually sounds more like a slogan or a way to shut down a conversation, kind of, I don't want to talk to you anymore, and I don't know that anybody says this. Let's keep going because there's a lot to get through. 6, you cannot say that was a wonderful dinner party and in the same breath, speaking of Hitler's murdering 6 million innocent people, say that was a wonderful Holocaust. Let's do it again soon. So A, this is not a question. B, who says this? Who does any of this? This, once again, is a straw atheist. I just think this is set up so that Christians can go like, hee, we've got it right. Never mind that Hitler was a Christian. Most of the people that helped commit the genocide that was the Holocaust were Christians. Today, I hear Christians who are minimizing the Holocaust and saying Hitler wasn't that bad. So, moving on. 7. The relativist would argue everybody can believe whatever he wants. Why then are they trying to get us to believe what they want? So A, from just a literalist perspective, you can believe whatever you want. I mean, that's just the way the world works. That's the way our minds work. Nobody can control really what's going on in your mind. Whether or not you should believe everything you want is a different question. But the second part, this isn't a contradiction. If I try to influence what you believe, there's nothing wrong with that. There's not a contradiction. I can say like, I think that you're wrong there. This is why. Here's my reasoning. And guess what? You can walk away still thinking whatever you want. You can accept or reject what I have to say. So this is just dumb. There's no contradiction here. 8, the relativist claims that everyone should be free to do whatever he pleases. Ask that same person how he feels if someone cuts in line in front of him. Okay, so this is a social custom. This has nothing to do with morality. And by the way, queuing is a cultural phenomenon. Not everybody has the same idea of when and how to queue. And there are some times when it's appropriate just to everybody make their own way. Whoever gets there in whatever order. This is not a moral issue. And of course, you might be upset if somebody breaks some of these social norms. But again, it's kind of dumb to include that in this section. 9, suppose the relativist comes home to find his home has been burglarized, his wife and children have been beaten, raped, and then murdered. Do you think you would hear, oh well, who am I to impose my views on this person? Tolerance is what we need here. His views on robbery, rape, and murder are just as valid as mine. So A, whoa, like what are we even contemplating here? We went from breaking into line to this horrific thing. And first of all, I don't know that relativists actually think this. You would need to talk to them about it. I just really doubt that anybody thinks that harming other people gratuitously in this way is the way to go. But this, again, has nothing to do with atheism. You don't need a God to tell you that harming people is wrong. And this is just horrific. Why do our minds go this way? I don't know. Let's move on. Number 10, how about philosophers who read books that say life has no meaning? Are these books meaningful? I'm not even sure why that's in this section, but there's a difference between saying that life has no intrinsic meaning, as in a deity is not handed down, why we're here, our purpose and all that. And it can be meaningful to have a book that talks about the lack of meaning, but that's kind of a different meaning. We're like eliding what different meanings mean and what they are. And again, I don't even know what that's doing here. 11, how can college professors tell their students there are no absolutes when it comes to right and wrong and then turn around and grade their papers? Oh, whose standard will they use to determine my grade? His or mine? So first of all, are college professors saying that there are no absolutes when it comes to right and wrong? I don't teach students morality. Students are constructing their own morality. I teach, for example, language, and I think a lot of us are teaching the material in our subject area. So this is just wrong to begin with. But second, when we grade papers, we usually have rubrics. There can be a content rubric, an organization rubric. How well did you argue the thing you're arguing? In my area, I can also use grammar and vocabulary as guides. So basically, I set up the standards and I tell students, this is how I grade you. So you don't need absolute standards of right and wrong when it comes to grading papers. You can set up what you think are the appropriate ways to grade somebody in this particular case. And now that I'm thinking of it, I actually see something similar with moral evaluations. Like I set up what my values are and what I want to accomplish, what are my goals in all of this, and then I decide if the action was right or wrong based on that. There's sort of a rubric around it. So there's not that much different than this. But again, this guy seems to think that God has handed down morals and they're absolute and there's no arguing with them. And then if you don't believe that, then anything goes and there's no way to come to any other determination. All right, let's move on to number 12. If there is no such thing as absolute moral truth, would you mind if your spouse was relatively faithful? Well, this is another thing where marriage is a contract between two people, and some people have open relationships, so those people would be fine. If you're in a monogamous relationship, then you would want your spouse to be faithful, but this is something that's relative. 13, would it bother you if your bank statements were relatively accurate? Now, is this just a mistake on the bank's part where I call up and I go, hey, this doesn't look right, or is there some nefarious action going on? Because that's important. I guess we're going back to there are these absolute standards that Phil seems to think we should all be following, and if you deviate, then it's all the same. So I see this as being a completely different category where I would just check with my bank. But it has nothing really to do with morality. It doesn't really correlate to the things we're talking about. It's just, this is another thing that's all over the map. Let's go on. We are finally on to section 2, which is morality. All that other stuff, I don't know what that was about. It was technically under logic. And then he says this section is under construction, and I wonder if that's true. Maybe that's why there's not a really good date up there. I don't know. A lot of this seems really inspired by Ray Comfort, so let's start. 1, have you ever told a lie? 2, how many lies do you think you have told in your life? 3, what would happen to our world if everyone always told the truth starting tomorrow? So this just all seems like evangelism. It doesn't seem like it's getting at how do atheists construct their moral systems. And one of the things that Christians never seem to consider is that there aren't white lies. There are things that we say because the truth would actually be very hurtful. So that might mean that the world wouldn't be better if people always just told the truth all the time. Moving on. 4, have you ever stolen anything? 5, if they answer no, so notice the shift, we're back talking to the Christian as opposed to listing our questions. Have you ever wasted time at work? Is that not a form of stealing from your employer? So have you ever stolen anything? I love the repetition because it's like you definitely have stolen something is what we're getting at. But wasting time at work, is that necessarily a form of theft? We have to define what these terms mean. If my job is actually based on accomplishing projects, and as long as I'm getting those projects done, how I get there and how I use my time is my own, not really stealing. And I don't know, I have trouble thinking that somebody that loses focus or daydreams for a little bit is actually stealing and is a horrible person and should be worried about that. I mean, we're human, so we're going to fall, but is that really a bad thing? And why not worry about wage theft or something? Why are you worried about stealing time? There are a lot of incidents of wage theft in our world. All right, number 6, what would happen to our world if everyone stopped stealing tomorrow? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what that would look like. 7, have you ever looked at a woman other than your wife and lusted after her? Well, way to assume what kind of relationship we're in. And here we are once again in thought crime land. We're moving on. 8, is it wrong to lie and steal and cheat? Yes, I would say so. I think you're harming people. 9, do you think everyone knows it's wrong to steal, lie, and cheat? Yeah, I don't know. You'd have to ask them. 10, how is that possible? And doesn't that sound like an absolute standard of right and wrong that applies to all people if everyone knows it's wrong? Why does everyone do it? The Bible calls it sin. Is it universal and true of us all? First of all, I have a whole series on sin. It's more than just doing bad things. There are all kinds of random things that are sin. So let's skip over that part. But we don't know that this is universal and true, and it depends on definitions. And as I mentioned earlier, lying sometimes is not a bad thing. It can actually be the kind and right thing to do. Stealing is something that's culturally constructed, and what are we talking about? And sometimes you add in things that are stealing that I would define in a different way. So we would need to talk about this a little bit more. But we don't know that this is an absolute standard. We don't know that. All right, moving on. 11, do you see you need of God's forgiveness for the things you have done in secret? You need of? What is that even? I'm going to say no. Now, if I've done something wrong, I should make amends and make it right. But if I've just done things in secret, like what do you have in mind here that I've done? If I've not caused harm, I'm not sure what I need to be doing about it at all. Just get on with my life. So no. 12, do you know that the Bible says, comma, that God is willing to forgive you because Jesus took the punishment you deserve so God could legally forgive you without compromising his judgment? What is that legally doing in this sentence? What does that have to do with anything? But yes, I know that this is what Christians say. 13, if there is no God, then there is no moral law. We can do the moral law. We humans, we can make our moral law. If there is no God, then life is meaningless and the world is an inexplicable riddle. No, it isn't. We can make our own meaning and we can try to understand the world. But if you read the Bible and believe God, the history of the human race is satisfactorily explained. Does that make sense? It doesn't. And no, it doesn't. It does not at all. 14, morality is absolutely true because God wrote the 10 Commandments on tablets of stone and on the heart of every man. How do you account for the fact that every man knows in his heart it is wrong to murder, it is wrong to steal, and it is wrong to lie? So, first of all, there are more than 10 Commandments in the Bible, and it doesn't matter if he wrote them on stone or papyrus or whatever. They're not really written in our hearts at all. Now, first of all, to address this, murder is by definition wrong. It is wrongful killing. If you want to talk about killing, there are instances of killing that we think are okay. Usually we consider stealing wrong, but we have to define what we're talking about in the stealing. And lying, we've already established, can be something that's okay. So anyway, this is just wrong, fractal wrongness, wrong. 15, every man knows it is wrong to have another man's wife. That is universal, unchanging, indisputable, timeless, absolute moral truth. You know it's true, I know you know it's true, and God knows you know it's true. Isn't that true? It's a lot of true in there. And we've already talked about the fact that you can be in an open relationship, and as long as everybody agrees that this is fine, and I'm not talking about the kinds of things that are usually associated with polygamy, but, true open relationships where everybody thinks this is the way to go. So this is not a universal, unchanging, indisputable, timeless moral truth. And need I say David in the Bible, because anyway, 16 and 16 a second time, because why not? Why do all men die? This is a biological question, and I'm not sure what that's doing here in this section. I guess that the Christians would say that we started dying when sin entered the world, but that's just what the book says. As far as I'm concerned, this is a biological question. What happens to our bodies? That is where I'm going to stop today, because that's the end of what he considers the morality issues. We're going to start on science in the next video. As you can see, this was just a mishmash of all kinds of things, assumptions about who atheists are, assumptions about what's right. We're not really interested in finding out what another person believes. We're interested in saying, isn't this an absolute truth? And that person is not doing it, so they are evil and sinful, and we're in the right. That's why I think that this is all about setting up a straw atheist for Christians to puff themselves up and say, look how awesome I am. I've got the truth, and I don't need nothing else, y'all. Well, what did you think about this list of questions? You can pop that in the comment section below, and while you're down there, you can like, you can subscribe, you can do all the YouTube stuff. You're on YouTube, you know what to do, and if you like what I do, you can buy me a coffee. That link is in the description below. We will finish up this awful list of questions the next time, and I'll see you then. Bye for now.